Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Field of Dreams on ACTN. And this is your boy, Stevie Wonder David. Today we talk coaching. And coaching, you know, there's so many variations and so many coaches out there. And we want to kind of see if we can help some of the coaches. And if we can't help them, maybe we can help, you guys can help us. But let's talk about coaching. I know you're anxious to meet our panel. I've got some experts, and I wouldn't waste no time. I'll start introducing my panel. And first is Jefferson George. Welcome to the set, Jefferson.
Thank you, Steve. Pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you. And this is another special guest of mine from, I knew him from school days. I teach him to play football, but he wouldn't admit that. But now he's big time in coaching, and he's going to teach me how to coach. So Ian Bain, welcome to the set, Ian.
Thank you, Steve.
Glad to have you, bud. And my last but not least, my favorite. I called him one time. I called him out his name one time, but I wouldn't forget this time. Anthony Sherwood. Anthony, welcome to the set.
Good to be here, Steve. Always a pleasure.
All right, we're glad to have you. And I know, Anthony, you've been doing a lot of stuff in the great stuff with the kids, the college kids and stuff. And Jefferson and Ian, I don't know, but I've learned some of the things that they're doing today. So let's talk about coaching. There's so many variations and so many issues. And so let's see if we can help or we can give suggestions to our coaches out there so we don't get enemies, right? But coaches out there, we're not trying to make enemies. If something is that we say that you're not doing, don't worry about it. You know, there's different ways to do things. As long as we get to the right spot, we want to make sure that we help in whatever way we can. So guys, what are some of the requirements? Everybody needs a coaching certificate, and everybody runs and get one, but doesn't mean that they're a good coach, or doesn't mean that they're taking the message the way it's supposed to be. Do you see that? And I'm just talking for me. Do you see that? And what do you guys see?
Yeah, well, I'll jump in. Just like in any other field, you know, there are persons who would go and seek qualification to be qualified to do whatever field that they're in. But that doesn't necessarily make you effective at the job that you're required to do. And football is the same. I think it's important that people seek to qualify themselves and to do the necessary courses. Some places, if you desire to work in a particular environment, you would be required to have such. But I think the acquiring the knowledge and so on, that is important. But even more important than that is being an effective coach, being able to assist those who you work with to achieve their potential. That's really what coach is about.
I'm saying this for the rest of the panel as well. Is it necessary to have a coaching badge, really? Or is it necessary for some of the people who never played the sport? Or what do you think?
Oh, that's a toss-up. I mean,
Tough question.
I know good football men, to be honest with you, who've never taken a coaching course. The reality today, though, Steve, is that if you are somebody who's looking to coach at a certain level, you know, you're ambitious, you want to coach in the MLS, or you want to coach in Europe at some point, I think it's a requirement that you have certain minimum
Qualification?
Badges or qualifications, you know. But it doesn't take away from the fact that I know a lot of really good football men who've not done as well in some of those UEFA A-license courses, for instance, you know. But I think, you know, I think if your ambition, again, is to coach at the very highest level, then you've got to pursue it. It's just the reality of things.
Yeah. You know, let me interject, maybe take us a little bit in a different direction. But speaking to your question, all right, very famous footballer that we know, not of Trinidad. Say who he is.
Outside.
He just won 3 Champions League championships in a row. A friend of mine was taking the UEFA badge when he was there, right? Fantastic player, unbelievable player. One of the greatest, certainly, of the last generation, right?
Yes.
Now, you go and you do a UEFA badge, you're there for 2 weeks. But somebody like himself is not going to be there for the 10 or 12 days because he's an analyst somewhere, he's, things going on. So, really, he's there for 6 days. That's not going to change his knowledge of the game, his perspective of the game, right? But he has been a fantastic player, intuitive, thoughtful, smart, right? And you grow from your experiences. But you do that for the reasons, the guys have spoken about. You need it. You need a license just so you can get in the door sometimes, right? On the other side of the coin, his football experience, it's incomparable. It is, it's played in Italy, it's played in Spain, it's played in France, right? So, and he's played under some of the best coaches, and he can acquire information. You guys made me think of a conversation I had with a former Trinidad national coach. I won't call his name. We were coming down to meet Alvin Henderson to go to see a professional doubleheader here at Manny Ramjohn, and he and I were in traffic for 2 hours, and that was the gist of our conversation. And the conversation really was about, did his license make a big difference in his career? And the answer was no. He said the month in Brazil, the 3 months in Holland, the month at Arsenal and Manchester United, right, gave him the exposure to see how other coaches managed their players, to see what they did to resolve the problems that they had in a loss or in a win, the weekend prior. Right. Those kinds of things, he said, gave him the opportunity to adapt, and then fine-tune, the program that he needed wherever he was coaching. So if he was in Trinidad, we have a different cultural vibe or idiosyncrasy, and he would adapt it to Trinidad and the needs of the players here. If he were coaching in the US or Canada or in England or wherever, he would try to do the same because obviously structures are different, opportunities are different, facilities are different. And he fine-tuned, but always pulling information from everywhere. And that is really, I feel, what coaching is. You have to keep growing your process. You get a license or a B license or a C or D license, and you think you're already accomplished and you want to make money from it. Then the same message you give into the players, you really better be listening yourself, because you got to keep growing your game. Can't be satisfied.
And you're right. And now they're going. In England, I see they're talking about managers now, and coaching now is really managing your players. So let's think about that, and we'll come back with that, but we need to take a break. We'll be right back. Viewers, we'll be right back after the short break.
Every Sunday at 2 p.m. on ACTN The Voice, we'll be taking you on a journey down memory lane with our Sunday classics. Relive the moments. Bonanza at 2 p.m. Little House on the Prairie at 3 p.m. Gilligan's Island at 4 p.m. Family Matters at 4:30 p.m. Hogan's Heroes at 5 p.m. The Jeffersons at 5:30 p.m. This is Sunday Classics on ACTN The Voice.
You're now changing your question.
What I would say, Steve, is this.
My first question was, and roll back that tape.
I made my debut for Crystal Palace against Tottenham Hotspur.
My responsibility was to get the ball and make things happen offensively.
All the time we've played together, I've always been the decoy.
Welcome to Field of Dreams on ACTN. My name is Steve David, and I'm your host. Okay, viewers, welcome back. Yep, panel. You know, in Europe, they talk about technical director. And I think it's really coaching they were referring to it back in then. And then we adapt and we take technical director and we make it into our own thing. And then they say coaches. And now it's managers. And I know we're going to take it and we're going to turn it into something different. So, but coaching to me and management is probably the right word because you have to manage players. But you have to know something about the game. So let's talk about that in a way. We're just talking about the background, how they see coaching, and then we're going to get into some nitty-gritty about really coaching. So let's talk about that a little bit. Managers. Does it?
I mean, when you talk about managers in England, Steve, as you quite rightly pointed out, I mean, there's so much more to that role than just somebody who handles day-to-day operations regarding the coaching. You know, in fact, if you look at any of the top clubs in England, for instance, there's a distinction between the manager of Manchester United and the first team coach. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that at that level, you need somebody who is dealing every single day with the players specifically.
But they're calling the coaches now managers in England.
Well, this is what I'm saying to you. So in other words, there are two roles that exist there at those clubs. There is the manager, and that's for us, that's probably the person that we refer to as the coach.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that person has a lot more involved in his day-to-day than just actual coaching.
Right.
He's involved with the recruitment of players, the negotiation of contracts and salaries. There's a lot more, whereas you have a first-team coach who is dealing every day with getting the players prepared for games and so on and so forth.
So you're saying they should call them? Are you saying you're talking about two persons here? Are you talking about
it's two
the
persons.
coach they call in manager in England now? Right?
Well,
Am I right?
I think you are right. And as Tony is saying, the person that we would see on the touchline, we would consider that person, and we would still have the title of coach or head coach.
Yeah.
Right? But the function that that person performs in the top leagues in the world, it encompasses a lot more than just that sideline coaching. It has to do with managing a budget. You know, you would be the one who responsible for everything related to the football, which we know is not just on the field. You know, so when the owner or those who are in charge of doing the budget, that's the person who is responsible for making sure that, all right, I have X amount of dollars, I can go after this caliber of players, that type of...
So that's what the manager does. So, but every team has a manager, and they have a coach, right, Ian? But now we seeing they calling coaches managers.
Yeah, I think I'll kind of lean with what Anthony was saying there, with the distinct roles. But listening to your question, it made me think a little bit about man management. The management of the player. That's kind of where my head went when I heard you speaking. And maybe you could take direction there a little bit, because it might be something that kind of suits what we see going on right here on the ground in our homeland, right? A famous basketball player in the United States nowadays, his name was Dean Smith, very famous. He says on game day, I have to do what I have to do for the team. But outside of game day, I have to do what I have to do for the player. Right? And he's a player, he's a coach who managed people like Michael Jordan and James Worthy and others, right? Very famous and fantastic players. And he felt he needed to know each of them. It's not just, one rule fits all. Jefferson, might be able to take me shouting at him. Anthony may not be able to. I need to know that. Anthony may have a girlfriend who just left him. Jefferson's mom might be sick. I need to know these things because I need to know why his performance has dropped off. What can I do to uplift him, to allow him to play at his best level? And that kind of thing is what man managing about. And really, as I go around and I look at the college games and so, and I know obviously quite a few of the coaches, and this is not a criticism. I just feel it's something that we can get better at. We need to learn, I believe, to relate a little bit more to each player. Not just what can you do for the team, but you belong to this team and I need to know what your situation is and as a player and as a human being and to grow it. And I think that's what man management is about.
And I think we can all make reference to our own experiences growing up. I always try to recall the differences in the approaches that coaches who I would have taken in preparing us, whether it's for a colleges league season, a U20 World Cup, something in the local league. And for me personally, I try to take the better part of what those guys brought and implemented even today, So some coaches were more about, as Ian mentioned, just having a little conversation, just conveying a little something to me that got me a little more confident about what I was about to do, I had other coaches who were screamers, as they say, and sometimes that's what you needed. You needed somebody who could fire up the group, for instance, because he felt like we were distracted or not as focused, So it's again, Steve, when you talk about coaching and managers, as Ian said, there's so much that goes into it, And I look at the world's game today. You look at Jose Mourinho, for instance, who was just fired by Manchester United, and you bring in a guy like Ole, for instance, and all he seems to talk about is just bringing the joy back into Man U. There's more to it, obviously, but you're seeing two contrasting styles of management. Jose Mourinho is a highly accomplished coach, manager, if you will. You can't compare the resumes of both those guys. But it's interesting to see the sort of results that this man now is getting with Manchester United, the same team,
Okay, I just went up to the different names, so the people out there, the young coaches out there, would realize this doesn't mean much is what you actually do. So let's talk about what they actually do. Some good, some bad, some of the faults, or the weaknesses, and things that it might need to strengthen or whatever, right? So you guys were, both of you, Ian and Anthony, you guys kind of hit it a little bit. So let's talk about it. Jefferson, I'll start with you. What are some of the things you see out there that we can improve in or we're doing a good job with? So we can mix it. We don't have to just beat them up. We can beat and pat in the back. Beat and pat in the back. Yeah, let's go. What do you think?
I'll start by patting on the back. I think we do have a lot of good coaches, in Trinidad doing some really good work. If we start with the most popular league, which is the Colleges League, you are going to see some coaches there doing some fantastic work with the youngsters. I think sometimes it's in our culture, it's not a culture, as you mentioned, accustomed to patting people on the back. We prefer to sometimes criticize when we see things going wrong. But I think for the most part, when you look at the quality of football that is being displayed by the youngsters, I think there's a lot of good that is going on, in the football, right? The football is constructive. You can see that there's a pattern that the coach wants to execute on the field. And I think that even from the last edition of the College League, it was actually a very high level.
So all in all, you think we have excellent coaches in the college ranks? And
yeah, I think we do have a lot of good coaches.
And what would you, Ian?
As you well know, I don't live here, and I'm only here for part of the year.
Right.
But I come during the football season, colleges league football season, so I can see games. Our football finds itself in a situation outside of the leagues. So you have academies like Anthony. And let me compliment Anthony right away. I met Anthony, a very young guy, right after he was coming back from his injury. He was at college. And we met at a football camp in the US. I knew he would be a good coach, and I knew he would be a committed coach because he was humble and he was really passionate about the game. And our conversations kind of took us there at night when the camp was finished, so that he would come back to Trinidad and establish an academy that continues to grow in from one success to the next, and show care for the boys and really push them along and give them a balanced view of the football and talk truth to them. It's not surprising. But so I think an academy is a fantastic place for a young boy to grow, particularly in the off season where there is no coach. But I also believe that in one of our earlier conversations, we spoke about community. I believe, and I'll give you two good examples. I don't know if you remember Ian Clausel. Ian Clausel runs a free clinic for the kids in Malik for the last 10 years. If you pass Durham Avenue twice a week and on a Saturday, Ian Clausel is working with players. I had good luck to be on St. Mary's grounds when the Trinidad and Tobago, the TT Maestros came to play on one of our older teams. And Sheldon De Freitas, who's their coach, who sources players from the Beetham, T-Lords, Laventille, Mova, right? Works free, right? And right now, he has 4 under 15 players in the national team, community driven. So there's place for academies, there is place for leagues, but I think, I know when Lincoln Phillips was the technical director here, he left 800 D-licensed coaches. His hope was they would go back to communities and form teams and stuff. And I really want to implore coaches, to beg coaches, to give that consideration. Think about Ian Clausel, think about Sheldon De Freitas, and think of the work they're doing to grow players, because everybody can't make their way to an academy. Everybody may not have the wherewithal. And Anthony, for his academy to survive, can't give everybody a scholarship. He has to find balance in it. But we can still go to the communities and make a difference. Like those two guys that I mentioned. I feel our football will benefit, our communities will benefit, our society will benefit, and more importantly, the young men will benefit. So, if I could implore, somebody sees this program and 2 guys go out and start a little team in their community, I would say this program would have been well worth it.
All right, we need to take a break, Anthony, but I want to come back with you and tell us some of your challenges or some of your success stories. And when we come back, viewers will be right back after the short break.
Looking for a safe place for the whole family? Well, now you found it. We are ACTN The Voice, your family-friendly station. Whether it's current affairs, kids and classic TV, sport and community features, Christian and music programming, plus so much more, ACTN is the station for you. Join us each day for programming that puts morals, values, and family first. We are ACTN The Voice, your family-friendly station.
You're now changing your question.
What I would say, Steve, is this.
But my first question was, and roll back that tape.
I made my debut for Crystal Palace against Tottenham Hotspur.
My responsibility was to get the ball and make things happen offensively.
In all the time we've played together, I've always been the decoy.
Welcome to Field of Dreams on ACTN. My name is Steve David, and I'm your host. Okay, welcome back, viewers. Before the break, like Anthony, everybody talks so great about you and your academy. And give us some of your challenges or some of your success stories that can motivate somebody or so on.
Well, I think Ian's been a bit kind, to be honest with you.
You've been kind.
What we try to do, Steve, is we try to create a good enough impression. And the reason I do that is because success for me is not necessarily winning a game, an under 14 game, an under 10 game. Success for me is that at the end of the cycle, these guys have something else to move on to. Right. So we would put stuff out there that my colleagues abroad would be looking at, and I try to ensure that the image that we put forth there is one that would suggest these guys can make the transition. You know. So we try our best in that regard. The truth is, in Trinidad and Tobago, if I try to sometimes make comparisons, I see a lot of guys who are making an incredible effort, as Ian said, with little or no resources, quite frankly. I think the biggest problem we all have in this country, as guys who are involved in youth development, is just a lack of understanding of what the benchmarks are. So what I mean by that is that if you compare a young man who is in an academy, a grassroots program in Holland, for instance, and you try to compare that to what we may be doing, you're looking at a young man who's, for instance, training twice a day, who's being educated, whose nutrition is being provided for. All the things that's needed for him to potentially go on to play at the highest level in Holland. We may not necessarily know what that level is like out there. So when you structure your programs, when you see a young man at 10 years old who seems to be very, very talented, if you don't know what that same 10-year-old in Spain is doing, what level he's existing at, then you could be putting that young man in Trinidad at a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. So I feel like for me, that is the biggest hurdle that we have. And how do you acquire that knowledge? It's exposure. It's your ability to take teams now maybe and carry them to Holland and have them participate in a very good tournament over there. So the kids themselves, as well as the coaches, the guys involved in the football, can have a look and be able to compare what we're doing with what these guys are doing. Mm-hmm. And given the challenges we all confront in football, because it's no secret, everybody struggles for funding in this country. That's a fact, right? Then getting that necessary exposure becomes very, very difficult. It's really a commitment on each man's path to maybe invest in yourself, to go to England around summertime, for instance, to observe, if you have the opportunity, the way Aston Villa goes about, developing a 16-year-old, for instance. And as I look at it as somebody who's been based somewhere else, as I look at it, that for me is the biggest problem we have here. Very good coaches, but I may not necessarily know the fitness levels that are required for our guys to compete in a big-time tournament in Paris, for instance. And if we can bridge that gap, if we can get more of our guys exposure to those levels, I think you will all of a sudden see a very different approach to how we develop young players.
So let me ask you guys a question then, based on off of what you said. Where does the separation start? With our kids and the kids in Europe or elsewhere? Are we, when we are 6 or 7, we are on par, and then where do they start leaving us? At what age? And how can we mend that or correct that?
Well, I think I can start by tying in what Tony just mentioned as well. I had an opportunity to train in Holland, and well, being a country one of the best in terms of the development systems and so on, a lot of the European countries copy from them, and they are looking at a target of 10,000 training hours in your development phase, right? They fight against bringing kids into a structured environment too early, right? There are some places that as early as 4 they want to have kids doing it, and they are saying at that period they want to be sort of most of all unstructured. But what's important is getting the hours of contact in. You know, if you look at 10,000 hours for development, that's I think right there we can begin to see where we are going to be falling short. To get 10,000 hours, you have to play football every day, right? In order to get that by the time you're 14 or 15 years old. It's impossible to get that by 2 days a week, right? So we are looking at falling short in terms of the contact hours that our youngsters have now. When, because of our physicality, because of our athleticism, at a younger age, because will be able to be more athletic than, you know, those other kids, you would be able to see us keeping pace. But as long as they get up to that physicality, then they're gone.
What age is that, you think? 14?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 14, 15 years old.
All right, Ian, what do you think?
I'm hearing the conversation, and I don't think it's a fair comparison with us and Europe.
Right.
I would say the comparison, and I think I said to you in our prior program, I just spent a couple of months in East Africa last year, and I prefer that comparison.
Okay.
Because they too struggle with structure. They too struggle with all the issues that we have. Lack of facilities, lack of balls, lack of equipment, right? But they play football every day.
So compare that for us. Yeah.
Every day they play football.
Yeah.
So, you know, people in all old boots, you know, whatever.
They're like us.
I mean, they're like us.
Right.
I went to see a team in Arusha. In fact, I tried to help the team a little bit. That field was so strange that you could go down the right wing and we can't see you from the other side.
Right.
But they're going down into that hole at top pace. That's their territory.
Yeah.
All of us would break our legs in hospital in San Fernando General looking for a bed, right? But they play their football, but they play every day. Yeah. And that is what our youth no longer do. So, you know, the comparison with Europe, I think is a little bit unfair. And another thought that crossed my mind, and you were talking about a cycle, and you were talking about understanding the number of practices, the number of hours. And I'm thinking of it, and I'm thinking of another Trinidadian, former national captain, who has his academy in Lebanon. I would say 11 or 12 years ago, he called me on the phone. He says, I'm very worried. I'm taking my team for the first time to Europe. We're doing very well in Lebanon, but so they went.
This is David Naked, right?
Yeah. And they took what they had to get, right? But they went to learn what the standard was. Yes. So he's talking about, right? So he comes back and he realizes the 3 days of practice not going to cut it. Yeah. So they had 2 more.
Right.
So they now try, you know, and they're waiting to go back. 10 years later, his under 16 last year went, beat Atletico Madrid, beat Getafe, and now his boys getting tryouts with those clubs.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a cycle of a decade.
Yeah.
Boys who started with him at 5 and now 16. You're putting in the extra 2 days, and the parents make a commitment to that, and you're playing a game. So it's 6 days of football a week.
Yeah.
You know? And in the case of the African boys, they're playing football every day. They don't need a coach.
That's right.
So that unstructured environment that Jefferson talking about is what they get in. So the European coach now go in and looking at the African player who raw, talented, skilled, and say, well, all right, I could put some tactics on him now, and I could structure him a little bit and put some blinders and a bridle on him. You know, and I think we probably need to look at that comparison maybe more than the European comparison.
But what I'm hearing is they just need to spend more time playing like we did back in the day. We played every single day.
Correct.
So now they're not. What you're saying is they're not playing every day. They have 2 or 3 days of practice, which is not going to cut it.
Correct.
To compete the rest of the world.
But I think at a certain level, Steve, natural talent, athleticism, I think it gets you in the door. But having an understanding of what it means to be professional at a young age, for instance, is what determines what kind of a career potentially you may have. it's interesting because Ian talked about African players. I encountered a lot of African players in the States, as we all do. Ghanaians, Nigerians, tremendous athletes. I liken them to us because you see them doing things with the ball that you don't see every day and so forth. But getting those guys, so a lot of them are coming to the US, some cases on scholarship. And the struggle they have sometimes, quite frankly, is that they're going from, in some cases, a little bit of a laissez-faire environment to an environment now where you're running into a coach like Lincoln Phillips, right? Who demands a tremendous level of professionalism. I had my little run-ins with Lincoln because maybe I am 2 minutes late for a team meeting or something. And the point I'm trying to make is that I think we have a culture here that still fosters and promotes good football, right? I think everybody's still somewhat passionate about it. But to take a player, a raw player who has tremendous potential, we all agree has tremendous potential, to the point where we can immerse that guy now into, I ain't even talking about England, I'm talking about Belgium or Holland, for instance, and say with certainty or a degree of assurance that that kid has all the tools he needs to succeed. I feel like we're way short at the moment. We have a case. There's a young player we all know, Levi Garcia, for instance, who went to Holland with one of the top teams in Holland, AZ Alkmaar. And I got a chance to know Levi very, very well. And one of the things Levi struggled with, quite frankly, are just some of the things that a young 15-year-old in Holland already knows, right? Which is the day-to-day grind, the fact that every single day you have to live up to a very, very high standard. Now, in fairness, Levi never struggled to make a team in Trinidad. 50% of what he brought to his college's league team is probably good enough. He never grew up in an environment where every single day someone was challenging him to be at the very, very top levels. And if that's not something that you're okay with, or you're familiar with, or you're comfortable with from 12, 13, 14, it's difficult to make that transition at 18 years of age, So I think he's a great example. Fantastic ability, tremendous potential. I still think he's going to do very well, right?
But where is he now?
He's in Israel right now.
Let's take a break and we continue when you come back. For you, we'll be right back after the short break.
You're watching ACTN, The Voice. ACTN The Voice, your family-friendly station.
You're now changing your question.
What I would say, Steve, is this.
But my first question was, and roll back that tape.
I made my debut for Crystal Palace against Tottenham Hotspur.
My responsibility was to get the ball and make things happen offensively.
All the time we've played together, I've always been the decoy.
Welcome to Field of Dreams on ACTN. My name is Steve David, and I'm your host. Okay, welcome back, viewers. Guys, listen to you guys. It seems as though we were born with some athleticism. We were born with flexibility. We were born with all the God-given attributes that we need to be successful in this game. But the breakdown is somewhere in our development. And whether we spend a lot of hours or be in the right program or whatever. So if we were speaking to somebody out, some coaches out there with a young group, because there's a lot of parents who try to get groups in the neighborhood to do stuff. Let's speak to them. you know, spend more time doing physical or spend more time doing ball work, or what? What do we tell them?
Well, I think the call has already been made by Mr. Bain. I think I will just, you know, repeat that, because it's important that people, he mentioned the coaches who were certified. We did have quite a few coaches certified for a country of our size. And the question really begs, what are they doing? What are they contributing towards the community? You know, I think sometimes coaches want to be, you want to do work where you think will be recognized. You know, the thing about working with kids or working in the community, that work doesn't bring any instant recognition. But again, the gratification by being able to positively impact a young man or young woman's life, I think that is the real value in investing, you know, in that way. So I'd encourage coaches, even though if you haven't gotten the certification, but the knowledge that you have, as we mentioned already, being able to spend time with them, being able to help them develop proper habits in training will help them to move along.
So hit some things on the head. I want you, Ian and Anthony, you guys hit some stuff on the head. This is what we need to do. This is what we need to do.
I think we had to figure out what we're about. What do we really want to be as a so-called footballing nation?
Mm-hmm.
We're a tiny country, so the pool is very, very small. That's the truth, right? Argentina is always going to have waves and waves and waves of great players. We may have 2 per generation, talking about world class. So if I was somebody entrusted with trying to take football to the next level in this country, I'll be honest with you. The first thing I would do is I would touch every community in this country. So on Monday, I'm in Cedros. Tuesday, I'm in Mayaro. Wednesday, I'm in Carenage. So any of the little spots that people are recognizing as places that are developing great little players, I am living in those little areas. And I am getting together with the men who have created little programs in those areas, and we're going to create a relationship. I am going to get to know very, very closely the kids that are coming from these areas, who are the ones who are talented. And so I'm going to try to create a relationship with almost everybody I can in this country. And we're going to come to an understanding that, you know what, in Cedros, the kids are super talented. They've got to be a little stronger. You know, they've got to be a little more physical. They've got to get a little more grit about them. So those are the conversations that we're having. That conversation might be different from the kids in Mayaro, or the guy that I'm talking to in Mayaro. And what I'm trying to create, Steve, is a super generation of players that we are identifying in these communities, and the things that we need to do in order to get them to a certain level, so that at 12 or 13 years old, we have kids who we can now say, you know what, this young man is a good candidate for entry into an academy in Manchester, Manchester City. I don't know if we're ever going to have the funding to really develop football in Trinidad the way we want to. And maybe it's a situation where we may have to look to others outside to do that job for us, quite frankly.
But what would, I mean, you have an academy is just as good as Manchester United.
No.
Only, let me explain why.
Yeah.
You don't have the equipment, but we substitute. And it's not that you can't get your kids to be there. All I'm saying is...
Steve, I'm not trying to make it seem as if it is not possible. But until corporate Trinidad and Tobago buys into this concept that we can be a force in football, it's going to be up to Jeff to do his thing, where he does his thing. It's going to be up to Mr. De Freitas, the guy that you mentioned, to try to do his thing. And everybody faces challenges, right? 90% of the kids who play national team football don't know what international football is like until they hit about 16 years of age. Right. My little youth teams in the US already know what it means to take a trip to France and compete in some tournament over there.
Yeah, but that's not development, though. I am saying.
But I'm talking, Steve, about getting us to the point where we can take national under 14 teams and realistically say, you know what, we can compete with the best in this hemisphere. I'm not just talking about playing and having good players and all of that. I'm talking about becoming a force in football.
Let me let Ian tell you what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Ian, Alvin Henderson, myself, Warren Archibald. We went to the U.S. and played football. And they had players from all over the world. And they were no better. It's just that, so if us here put in the time, I think there's nobody better than us. We can compete because we have compete with the rest of the world.
Let me just say a couple of quick things. Hearing the conversation going, we can no longer depend on corporate.
Yeah.
Right.
Society not heading in that direction, right? So we have to get it done ourselves. We grew up in an environment, and I think we can go back. We can go back to the future, I think, at some level, right? We need to find more volunteers as coaches. People who are committing to do things for young people, to improve their society, to improve their community. We need to do that. The money is just, they're just not where it was for us in the country. So that voluntary coach who we grew up with, the Trinidad youth team, the national team, there was no money available to us. Hearing the national anthem and wearing a shirt and exchanging it with the English team or whatever was enough for us, right? And we worked hard. But just to get back to the level of the coaching, there are a couple of thoughts you were asking about where separation takes place and what we need to do. A ball in every home helps.
True.
Ball in every home helps. And the exercises that you give the younger groups, you can't touch a ball 100 times, 200 times in a practice. You can't touch a ball 4,000 and 5,000 times in a practice. On your off days, you still have to be touching that ball for at least 30 minutes to 60 minutes. I think that is something we certainly can do. And that's a thought I want to leave out there. Second thing I want to leave, I think a lot of coaches, and there's not a complaint, because it's very natural and possible to happen. We fall in love with drills. So we see a nice drill, and it has nothing to do with your team. It's not going to help your team practice, but it's a nice drill. So you want to come on the field and put on those cones and do a nice drill. Right? It has nothing to do with growing your team. Right. Don't be so driven by the drills. Don't become an addict to the drills. Okay? Look at your team good. Assess your team. See what their needs are and work from there. The third thing I would potentially say as you grow as you grow those teams, I would say that we need to stop. No.
Go ahead.
The third thing I would say is that the coaches need to learn the nuance of a position. You know, you would see a drill going, and the winger gets the ball, he gets down the line. It's the same cross, it's the same cross, it's the same cross. The winger doesn't know how to get open. He doesn't know if to check back, he doesn't know how to check forward, he doesn't know if to make a little wall pass and get the ball behind the defender, he doesn't know if to bring his man out and get a ball through. You have to learn the nuances of a position. Right? I'm just using a winger. So the winger gets up, and it's the same cross. He doesn't drive it first post, you don't know where the ball comes in last post, you don't know if he's clipping it back, you don't know if he's bringing it to the wrong foot and sending it in another direction. If you don't know the nuance of a position, the nuances of a position, then you cannot coach beyond the technical level. You know, how does center forward show? What angle is he showing at? Is he finding the appropriate space? Is this, you know, is he going to take his man into the other defender? You're going to drift him inside? Is he looking to see whether the left back is coming out slow so he can play a little offside game on that side of the field? You have to know the nuance of a position to really, I think, advance your boys and girls.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we will pick up where you left off. Viewers, we'll be right back after the short break.
You're watching ACTN, The Voice. Connect with ACTN The Voice on Facebook or Instagram at ACTN The Voice. ACTN The Voice, your family-friendly station.
Every Sunday at 2 p.m. on ACTN The Voice, we'll be taking you on a journey down memory lane with our Sunday classics. Relive the moments. Bonanza at 2 p.m. Little House on the Prairie at 3 p.m. Gilligan's Island at 4 p.m. Family Matters at 4:30 p.m. Hogan's Heroes at 5 p.m. The Jeffersons at 5:30 p.m. This is Sunday Classics on ACTN The Voice.
Okay, welcome back, viewers. Yeah, guys, I'm going to put you guys on the spot. And I want to hear what you have to say to this. If you had the best prospect in the world at a 12-year-old who can compete with anybody, how do you keep him at that level? A Trinidad I'm talking about. How do you keep him at that level? Or what do you have to do to keep him at that level to compete and to continue to be the best in the world?
All right, well, that's a great prospect to have, yes. At 12 years old, the development is key, and spending the time, being able to expose this 12-year-old to a competition that will continue to challenge him is very, very important. Mr. Bain mentioned about understanding the game. A lot of times you're going to have players, and our players, as I already mentioned, we have that natural physical presence. We quick, we can run, but understanding the game is what really, carries a player from one level to the next. And his levels of understanding will improve when he is able to compete with players who are better than him, where that makes him check and have to solve problems on the field. Right? And that's what will get that player better. So creating opportunities for him to do that. Okay, so you will create the opportunity for him to think. What about you and Ian Sherwood?
You go first?
Yeah, you go first.
So I struggle with this constantly, all the time. And I would say to you that it's a very real problem. I feel like I've had one or two kids in our setup who I consider to be genuine phenoms. One of them's at Presentation College at the moment. He's on the national under 14 team and what have you, right?
He tried to come to St. Mary's,
Maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, he's a country.
It's possible,
Yeah.
right? Anyway, so the only thing I have recognized that we can potentially do in order to keep those kids invigorated, focused, challenged, is that you have to play them with significantly older guys. If I keep him with the other 8-year-olds, he's in a comfort zone. They're not going to challenge him enough. This particular young man that I'm referring to, at 9 years old, was playing with our 14-year-olds. So every day he came to training, he knew he had to be super quick. His decision-making had to be super fast because he's playing with guys who are going to close him down quicker. He had to be, every day was a challenge. And I felt like that was the only thing I could do, quite frankly. It may not be ideal, Steve, to be honest with you. Yeah. But that for me was the only thing I could do, and we do it even now, that could challenge a very talented kid on a daily basis.
Let me give Ian a chance because I'm running out of time.
Okay.
I want to hear what you have to say on this one.
Well, I think we'll have to put him on a plane and send him somewhere else.
Okay.
All right? In search of competition. I mean, Messi and his family went to Barcelona at that kind of age. He needed some help in his growth, diet, number of things, better fields, better competition at his age group. From time to time, I assume playing with older boys in a professional environment that made certain demands. It's happening in every sport. It happens in swimming, happens in tennis. You see it happens in tennis. I mean, people send their children to Spain in particular because of the clay courts. It teaches them the angles. It teaches them a slower game. It helps develop them. Same thing happening in cricket. We were talking of Jofra Archer about to play for England. He went. You look at our cricketers in the past. They went and did well because they had contracts in England. Not because England produced anything unique. It's because every day they had to play. And they had to adapt to conditions. They had to meet the professional standard, right? So it grew our sport in general. The same thing would happen here. We don't have the fields. We don't have the environment. We don't have the competition for that kid. And maybe it's something that at a governmental level, you identify some of these boys and give them a chance out there. You know, it would do wonders for, you know, to set an example and give an example to other young boys who have similar dreams. But to answer your question short, I would buy him a plane ticket out for him and his family.
There's one team, Steve, that I am very excited about, real quick. And that is the current national under 15 team. Okay. That team has been training for 2 years. They're training up to 6 times a week. I'm really excited to see what will be achieved with that group.
Listen to you guys' songs as though we have too many age groups then, because, and again, back when we were in primary school, I was 9 years old and I was playing for the primary school team, which is under 15. So it sounds as though we should play up to our standard and not what age group we should be in. Is that what you guys are saying? And push them up to the standard that they are?
Sometimes, sometimes you can do that with particular kids, but the concern with that is always playing them with kids who are much heavier than they are.
Yeah.
So they need
it's a balance.
It can be done. With
that particular young man that I mentioned, we would occasionally, a lot of times, bring him back down with the guys his age, so that he doesn't lose the joy. You know, he doesn't lose the fact that he's able to go past 2 or 3 guys.
All right, we're out of time, guys. I want to thank you guys so much for being here. Jefferson,
always
Ian,
a pleasure.
Anthony,
you're welcome.
Appreciate you so much. ACTN, thank you for giving us the opportunity. Viewers, thank you for tuning in. Facebook page we do have, you can check us out, and we do have an email address, petersjuniors@gmail.com. You can drop us a line. The show is ended. Go in peace. My name is Steve David. Good night.